After a whopping 26-year hiatus, the Fatal Fury series is finally back with a brand new entry, City of the Wolves, and while some fans are understandably thrilled to see this iconic franchise revived, others have been left scratching their heads. The inclusion of real-lifers like Cristiano Ronaldo and Salvatore Ganacci on the roster has sparked a bizarre cocktail of excitement, confusion, and outright fury. So whether you're looking forward to this bizarreness or you're one of those fans who's feeling a bit on the fence, allow me to offer an alternative, something that'll hopefully amuse everyone, regardless of where you stand. While early Fatal Fury and other SNK fighting games were remembered for their Neo Geo pixel perfection, today we're diving headfirst into the world of weird, illegal, and totally unauthorized SNK titles that were created for the 8-bit grey market. So with that said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. These are the illegal 8-bit SNK games for the NES. Yeah. The 1990s, a time when fighting games weren't merely a genre, but a global movement. A testosterone-fueled ballet of pixelated pugilism that swept across arcades and home consoles like an unstoppable hurricane of uppercuts, tiger knees, and excessive grunting. You can grab Mortal Kombat 1 with a bone-crunching 65% off, Tekken 8 with a mighty 64% off, and Street Fighter 6 at a staggering 74% off, plus huge discounts on character passes to round out your rosters. Right now, through my links, get yourself some absolute bargains for next to nothing, including up to 9% on countless other games too. Happy savings, and hope you enjoyed this video. Just when Street Fighter 2 began to famously hit its stride, inland stretching from East Asia to Central and South America, another challenger has entered the arena. A contender not only willing to stand toe-to-toe with Capcom and Midway, but one that dared to crown itself king. Enter SNK Fighting Games, a series of brawlers born from the fertile loins of arcade culture and forged almost exclusively from SNK's mighty Neo Geo hardware. The Neo Geo AES console was so opulent, so prohibitively expensive, it made the Super Nintendo look like a Happy Meal toy. Retailing for a cool $649 in 1990, with individual cartridges often costing $200 a pop, this was not a machine for mere mortals. This was the Bentley of sprite-based gaming, beautiful, bespoke, and almost entirely unobtainable for anyone who didn't have a hedge fund or an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, but at least average consumers could enjoy its library in arcades. SNK's strategy wasn't focused on the domestic Japanese market or American malls, it was international. The Neo Geo MVS arcade cabinet, its coin-operated cousin, was a roaring success in places often overlooked by the mainstream gaming industry. Mexico, Brazil, South Korea, the Philippines, and China. In these regions, SNK became a household name, and characters like Terry Bogard, Kyo Kusanagi, and Mai Shiranui were elevated to pop culture superstardom. This wasn't just more fighting games, this was a revolution, and in many parts of the world the likes of King of Fighters and Fatal Fury didn't play second fiddle to Street Fighter, they were the headline act. But of course, when gaming franchises strike oil in emerging markets, the rats inevitably come crawling, and crawl they did, particularly from the neon-lit alleyways of Taiwan and the icy basements of post-Soviet Russia. These regions became hotbeds for bootlegging brilliance, as teams of wildly talented, utterly unauthorized developers took it upon themselves to adapt SNK's crown jewel for platforms it had no business appearing on. Chief among them, the humble 8-bit Famicom and its endless parade of unauthorized clones. And so, dear viewers, let us journey into one of the most bewildering, technically dubious, and downright audacious chapters of SNK's legacy, the illegal, unauthorized, and utterly magnificent 8-bit version of the King of Fighters 96, alongside a veritable buffet of other SNK bootlegs, including Fatal Fury, that somehow found their way onto the NES. So let us descend deeper into the underbelly of the industry, a shadowy realm where creativity and criminality intersect, where brilliance is found on dodgy cartridges with label artwork that looks like it was drawn in Microsoft Paint by someone with one eye and no reference images. I speak, of course, of the bootlegging scene. Now, we've all heard of a tale of Street Fighter 2, the quarter-munching juggernaut that redefined fighting games, printed money for Capcom, and left a permanent dent in every arcade joystick from here to Osaka. But what's less documented is the secondary wave of copycat chaos it inspired. Not from legitimate rivals, but from the thriving pirate underclass of 90s game development. Yes, Street Fighter 2 didn't just inspire Capcom's competitors, it inspired criminals. Enter Hummer Team, the loose collective of Taiwanese developers who, rather than toil away under the banner of a respectable studio, chose the path of the rogue artisan. Think of them as the Banksy of bootlegging. What's more, the engine developed for their unholy 8-bit Street Fighter 2 mutation didn't die with one single outing. Oh no, it was dragged out repeatedly, dressed up in new outfits like a child being forced through a series of doom-schooled plays. If you thought the official Street Fighter 2 had a lot of iterations, it's nothing compared to the bootleg of the same name. Naturally, once SNK's roster of fighters began punching and posing their way into the hearts of gamers across Latin America, Asia, and basically any region where a Neo Geo arcade machine could be wedged between a fruit stand and a pirated DVD rack, the bootleggers sniffed a fresh opportunity. They pivoted effortlessly to SNK properties, because really, once you've committed IP theft on Capcom, why stop there? We will get to one of their efforts soon, but first, enter Konisoft, a name that, in certain back-alley collector circles, is often spoken with the kind of whispered reverence usually reserved for master forgers, skilled counterfeiters, or magicians who make entire court cases vanish. In 1993, Konisoft dropped a particularly cheeky gem, a Famicom adaptation of Fatal Fury 2, and here's the truly shocking bit. It wasn't entirely awful. Yes, I know, you came here expecting bargain bin trash, the digital equivalent of a wet cardboard box filled with fire ants, but no, Fatal Fury 2 for the Famicom actually exhibits something unnerving: effort. The game opens with a brief intro sequence that, while laughably skeletal when compared to its arcade big brother, does at least attempt to channel the source material spirit. And the visuals? For an NES era title on budget hardware, they're almost offensively competent. Bright stage backdrops, decently animated character sprites, and just enough flash to make you sit back and go, hang on, this might actually be playable. This is the sort of technical witchcraft that makes you question everything. It's like discovering someone's programmed Tekken 3 on a calculator. But don't get too comfortable. For while the surface glistens with bootleg brilliance, we've only just begun to peel back the layers. There's still plenty of incompetence, shortcuts, and joyful absurdity to uncover. And sure, Koni's Fatal Fury 2 may look the part, strutting about in its garish 8-bit regalia like a peacock at a poultry show, but its gameplay, much like a budget lasagna, utterly disintegrates the moment you try to engage with it. Predictably, the fighter mechanics don't so much emulate SNK's originals as they drunkenly stagger in their general direction, spilling lukewarm combo sauce all over the place. And why? Because underneath a gaudy pixel veneer lies the same recycled Street Fighter 2 bootleg engine that Hummer Team stitched together for their earlier 8-bit crime spree. The end result? A game that plays not like an SNK fighter at all, but rather a particularly concussed Street Fighter knockoff that's been force-fed amphetamines and told to behave. Gone is the Fatal Fury franchise's signature two-plane fighting system, that glorious mechanic that allowed players to dodge into the background and deliver sneak attacks from alternate planes of combat. Absent too is the iconic power gauge that added a strategic rhythm to the mayhem. Instead, what we're treated to is a flat, one-dimensional slugfest, where the fighters move with the grace and finesse of a wheelie bin being shoved down a gravel driveway. And speaking of fighters, oh how the game loves to tease. At first glance, the character select screen offers what appears to be a smorgasbord of options, a lavish banquet of brawlers. But upon closer inspection, one quickly discovers the bitter truth. Many of these so-called characters are nothing more than palette-swapped imposters wearing different coloured trousers and dashed hopes. Still, as we've seen, deception is half the charm in the bootleg underworld, and this is only the beginning. Still, credit where it's due, we're not dealing with total hackery here. Amid the smoke and mirrors, Koni's Fatal Fury 2 bootleg does manage to cobble together a reasonably respectable cast. Both Bogard brothers, Terry with his trucker swagger and Andy with his confusing hairstyle, are present and accounted for. Joining them is the ever buoyant Mai Shiranui, whose fighting style continues to defy both gravity and common sense. We also get Kim Kafwan, South Korea's poster boy for pixel-perfect taekwondo justice, the hulking chain-swinging Chang Kohan, who looks like he was modelled using only circles, and the aristocratically named Lawrence Blood. For a bootleg, it's a more authentic lineup than one might reasonably expect from a cartridge that likely shipped in a cardboard sleeve featuring badly translated Spanish, an upside down SNK logo, and box art that may or may not have been traced from a VHS cover of Bloodsport. But enough of these warm-up acts, let's turn our attention to the King of Fighters 96. Believe me, when I say this bootleg defies all expectations, it is, without exaggeration, everything one could possibly desire from an unauthorized, technically impossible 8-bit rendition of SNK's flagship fighter. From the very first frame, the game greets us with an introductory sequence that boldly, brazenly attempts to mirror the arcade original. And I say attempts with admiration, because while it's clearly cobbled together using 8-bit scraps and fever dreams, it actually works. The intro is presented with such flamboyant confidence and lovingly broken standard English that one can't help but applaud. Visually, the thing is an absolute shocker, in the best way possible. Characters are, dare I say it, recognisable. Sprites are detailed. Backgrounds are vivid and animate just enough to suggest someone on the dev team cared. A dangerous quality in the bootleg world. There's kind of a sincerity here that elevates it far above your usual back alley ROM hack. This isn't just piracy, it's performance art. So where, you ask, did this pixelated black magic come from? This one is from the legendary Hummer team, who we touched on earlier. If bootlegging had a Hall of Fame, these scoundrels would be enshrined in Marvel. Their resume reads like a list of gaming crimes that somehow became cult classics, chief among them the infamous 8-bit Street Fighter Alpha 2. And by Alpha 2, of course I mean a bizarre reinterpretation of Alpha 1, hastily rebranded with a 2 on the end, for reasons that can only be described as marketing through delusion, but it's a great effort nonetheless. Now, according to the ever-vigilant archivists over at bootleggames.fandom, this King of Fighters 96 NES bootleg released circa 1998, and was almost certainly constructed atop the withered remains of that very same Alpha knockoff we just touched on. And the evidence is overwhelming. Both games share the same inexplicably garbled sprite glued to the top of the screen, like a cursed HUD element. It serves no function, delivers no information, and looks like it was pasted in by accident, and then forgotten about for eternity. Add to that the telltale recycled sound effects and musical cues, and what we're dealing with becomes increasingly clear. This isn't a clean build, it's a Frankenstein monster of fighting games, a grotesque pastiche stitched together from leftover assets, lifted wholesale from older bootlegs and reanimated with sheer force of will and probable copyright infringement. And yet it works. It really shouldn't, but it does. Against all logic, hardware constraints, and legal precedents, it holds together long enough to be called a game. And not just any game, an impressive functional facsimile of one of SNK's most iconic entries. It is, in short, a miracle of malware-grade game development. From the first boot-up screen, this thing flaunts its deception with pride. The character select screen looks impressive, positively bursting with options, but as is tradition, in the glorious realm of 8-bit fakery, it's all a ruse, a masterclass in visual deceit. Strip away the palette swaps, those lazy imposters donning different coloured trousers and pretending they're someone new, and you're left with just 7 unique fighters. 7! Not exactly the King of Fighters, is it? Still, more credit where it's due, this bootleg actually tries in ways most of its ilk do not. For starters, it includes a range of difficulty settings. Yes, even bootleggers respect your right to be mildly challenged. An unexpected bit of quality of life functionality from people who otherwise seem to code like they were racing the police. More impressively though, it introduces a fully functional 3-on-3 team mode. The very gameplay structure that made the King of Fighters a unique beast in the fighting game world to begin with. The fact that this mechanic made it into an 8-bit pirate port on hardware barely capable of handling one background layer and a scrolling sprite is frankly nothing short of miraculous. According to the tireless digital archaeologists at bootleggames.fandom, there's compelling evidence to suggest that the developers of King of Fighters 96 NES port originally planned to include a staggering 20 characters. Yes, 20! On an 8-bit system! That's not just ambitious, it's borderline psychotic. But alas, ambition and reality rarely make good bedfellows. 13 of those fighters were allegedly cut from the final build, likely due to one of two reasons. Either the ROM size couldn't handle it without catching fire, or the Famicom cartridge would have gained sentience and sued the developers out of spite. You see, fitting that many characters, each with their own sprites, movesets and animation frames, into a standard NES ROM is an exercise in lunacy. For context, most licensed NES fighting games struggle to include 6. This Madmen's bootleg was set to surpass official releases in size and scope. Had they pulled it off, it would have been the largest NES fighting game in recorded history. But in the end, the bootleggers had to settle for being merely absurdly ambitious, rather than outright revolutionary. Still, one can't help but marvel at what could have been. An 8-bit Neo Geo dreamscape bursting at the seams, crammed onto a cartridge held together with prayers and hot glue. But don't worry, we're far from done, for this tale doesn't end with King of Fighters 96. As is tradition in the bootleg realm, where naming conventions are more vibe than truth, a sequel would follow. A game brazenly branded as King of Fighters 97, which naturally had absolutely nothing to do with King of Fighters 97, but let's take a look anyway. This counterfeit curiosity housed not from Hummer Team, but from an entirely different rogue outfit, an elusive, shadowy cabal known as Rexsoft. That name alone evokes the image of a shady basement operation run by 3 cousins, 2 soldering irons, and a bucket of instant noodles. And while the label slapped on this cartridge proudly proclaims it to be King of Fighters 97, what we actually have is a port of King of Fighters 95. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's a game that claims to be from 1997, but plays like it's from 1995, and looks like it was assembled in a Taiwanese garage using half a potato and the collective hopes of children who couldn't afford a Neo Geo. To its credit, this entry does appear to be a little more generous with its fighter count, boasting a whopping 9 characters. That's right, 2 more than the last bootleg. We're in luxury territory now. Of course, the roster screen, as per usual, lies through its teeth. It flaunts a lineup that looks like it was ripped straight from a Marvel vs. Capcom fever dream drawn in crayon. But we've learned not to take these things at face value, or sprite value in this case. Gameplay wise, it's business as usual. Players can form teams of 3, once again nodding to SNK's beloved team system, and leap headfirst into a glorious mess of janky hitboxes, random input buffering, and character balance that feels like it was decided by throwing darts at a wall covered in power levels. But that's part of the charm, isn't it? Because in the world of NES bootlegs, chaos is the design document. But the standout feature here, if one can call it that, is the game's deeply unpleasant screen-shaking effect. Every time one character lands a hit, the entire display judders like it's being operated by someone with a personal vendetta against your optic nerves. Imagine if this very video did that every time I made a point. Your monitor would be airborne. Still, with nothing else, one has to admire Rexsoft's commitment to the grift. Not content with releasing a single dodgy cartridge, they simply re-released the exact same game under a new title. First as King of Fighters 98, and again the following year as, brace yourself, King of Fighters 99. Same game, new label, absolutely no shame. The hustle, dear viewers, is real, and frankly, it deserves some respect. If this parade of illegal pugilism tickled your fancy, do consider subscribing to this channel where we celebrate the obscure, the forgotten and the utterly absurd corners of gaming history. Also, don't forget you can grab Mortal Kombat 1 with a bone-crunching 65% off, Tekken 8 with a mighty 64% off, and Street Fighter 6 at a staggering 74% off. Plus huge discounts on character passes to round out your rosters. Right now, through my links, get yourself some absolute bargains for next to nothing, including up to 9% on countless other games too. Cheerio, and I'll see you all again soon.